So the news cycle this week has been dominated by the chaos surrounding former President Donald Trump, and that just might be how the White House wants it. Peter Baker and Michael Shear write for the New York Times, quote, "No commander-in-chief is, in more than a century, has been eclipsed by, in the public eye, by the leader he succeeded the way Mr. Biden has at times. Now with the first criminal prosecution of a former president in American history, it will be that much harder to command the national conversation. Yet, it is a contrast that Mr. Biden's team hopes will eventually benefit him, to the extent that the remainder of Mr. Biden's term is a split screen between the 45th and the 46th presidents. White House officials are willing to live with less airtime if it means their president is seen to be focusing on manufacturing, healthcare, and climate change, while the other one is seen focusing on pretrial motions, hostile witnesses, and records of hush money paid to a porn star. They do offer this warning, however. Anti-chaos may be appealing to voters exhausted by Trumpian turmoil, but it has not historically been a ratings draw. Jen, I think this is right. I think the Biden White House has a lot of opportunities here. Like, while all this has been going on, he's been working, and he's got a lot of points on the board. Having said that, it does feed into Trump's base for him to cast himself as a victim. And I just wouldn't. I'm wondering if your advice would be to, like, rest on that.
No, you can't. I mean, you have to be. I think that they have an opportunity here to be the anti-chaos president. I think that in terms of Trump is reaching out to his base. He's shoring up his base. I don't think that he is winning over any new voters. I would be concerned about the lack of coverage. You have to work extra hard to get, and you saw, like, this week, the president was in Minnesota doing an infrastructure event. There's a lot on the table that they can implement, from the infrastructure bill to the CHIPS bill, the semiconductor plants that are being built here. A lot of ways to show, and this is important, that government is working, that it is responding to the needs of the country, that things are getting done. It's hard to break through. You're going to have to use social media. You're going to have to make a lot of content available to try to reach people where they are, because Trump will dominate just the sort of traditional earned media news spaces. But it's a really important contrast to make. You just have to work hard at getting it to break through.
You know, there's also, Jen, I think, an underestimation of the president's calmness and his, for lack of a better phrase, his maturity. Yeah. And he's intent, Eddie, on doing the job. I mean, every sense you get from the presidency, from President Biden's presidency, he's intent on doing the job each and every day. When you consider what he has on his plate, it's a lot more important to the globe, to global peace, to the global conduct. The war in Ukraine, taking care of that, keeping NATO together. We just saw a new member of NATO, Finland, coming in. All of that is derivative of the fact that President Biden has been on this job, presiding over a war in Europe, presiding over an economy that fluctuates here in America. That's his job, and he's doing it.
Competence matters, maturity matters, responsibility matters. One of the things that I'm worried about, though, is that breaking through. He's already having a difficult time with young voters. And I was teaching my seminar on James Baldwin while the arraignment was happening. We cut to it. And I was watching my students, and they were just looking like this, just another moment. And they were engaged, but they were just kind of like, and then they started talking about politics. And Biden didn't come off well. Now, this is a self-selected class. They're in my class. And so I'm interested in, all the chaos. His numbers were already shaky among this demographic. How does he get their attention as we come to the next election? I'm worried about that.
Is it him, or is it just politics in general?
It's politics in general, and it's him. Whether or not he's up to responding to the moment.
What are they missing from him specifically? What are they saying?
What they were saying in an interesting sort of way was he doesn't seem to have the fire we need to speak to what is in front of us. Now, mind you, there was a moment in the conversation that harkens back to last week and around this table where they were like, I don't even know what the common good is. I don't even know what it would mean to enter into that. right? And these are Princeton students who have pathways to the top 1% in some ways. But they were asking the question in a very interesting way, whether or not this 80-year-old man had the stuff to respond to what they were experiencing, what they were seeing in their lives. So how does he break through?
That's going to...
I mean, that is...
Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that is... you can't just rely on, it's not like when I worked for President Clinton in the 90s and you're like, get a package together by 2 p.m. and it's going to be on the network news and it's going to break through to 60 million people. So you have to, and in the limited staff that a White House has, and in even if you're not controversial, you're not going to break through. So you have to do it. It's going to require money. It's going to require the Democratic Party spending money on behalf of the president to get these messages to break through and to, for students to meet them where they are. I mean, we saw the students in Tennessee. We saw they're aligned with President Biden on guns. They're aligned with President Biden on a lot of issues. But you have to work very hard, and it will require outside spending to get it so that people can hear it. It is, and that's the toughest part about being the White House communications director. Is like, how do you actually get something to be not have him say something great or be in the same place that the American people are, or even where young people are. It's how do you reach them?
And Mika, the president has been out on the road, I think the White House would say, touting his agenda, touting the impact of the infrastructure bill, everything that they've been able to do in these first couple of years. But to Jen's point, it's often difficult to break through.
Look, he promised he'd be more boring. And in many ways, he has. And that has been, he meant that in a good way. I mean, you look, he's the counter to the chaos of a former president that's being arraigned and is now under a judge's order and is accused of crimes. And the part that's not even being mentioned as a problem, the part that's being brushed over by members of the Republican Party and evangelicals, is this has to do with hush money payments to Playboy bunnies and porn stars. So Biden is a perfect contrast. I think